Pick your side right now. One all-out set to failure or higher volume with several hard sets. If you pick the brutal single set, you may be choosing the style that feels hardest but leaves you smaller. By the end, you'll know which one actually wins for muscle size and why effort alone doesn't decide it. This comparison is one hard set against enough hard sets across the week. By the end, you'll know which approach to build your training around for size, when one set to failure is still useful, and the minimum weekly set target that stops you underdosing growth. First, the two cases fairly, then the rounds that actually decide growth, then who should pick which. Start with the fair version of both sides. One brutal set has a real appeal. It's efficient, it feels serious. You walk away thinking, yes, that definitely counted. And sometimes that matters. If your schedule is chaos and your lunch break is doing its usual disappearing act, one hard set is a lot easier to fit in than 5. Higher volume looks less dramatic. It looks slower, less heroic, but it gives you more chances to do good work while you're still fresh enough for it. So on the feeling test, one set to failure has a strong case. Failure gives you a huge effort signal fast. It feels hard in a way more moderate training often doesn't. But a set can feel brutally hard and still not be the best way to grow the most muscle. That's the trap. A lot of people judge the session by exhaustion and miss whether the muscle got enough work this week. If you use suffering as the scorecard, you become the guy who trains hardest in the room and still looks smaller than his effort says he should. So this first point goes to one set to failure, on efficiency and time. If your only question is, what can I survive on fast? This side absolutely has a case. But survival is not the verdict here. The next round is the one that actually decides size. Now the real axis, how much growth work the muscle sees across the whole week. Muscle grows from repeated hard tension. One all-out set can light that up in the moment. But added hard sets keep adding more stimulus that a single bout just does not replace. That is the whole issue. This is where the myth falls apart. Failure can make a set better. It cannot do the whole job by itself. One hard set feels big, but it still leaves you with too little work across the week. And this is the part a lot of people never track. Their one set gets harder, their numbers improve, but their physique barely moves because the weekly hard set floor stays too low. Clear point to high volume here. If you want to stop underdosing growth, build around roughly 12 to 15 hard sets per muscle each week. Don't hope 4 to 8 brutal sets will behave like 12 to 20. They won't. And there's a very plain reason to take that seriously. In direct comparisons, the higher volume plans grew more muscle. Not magic, just more weekly work done hard enough. So before the final verdict lands, which side were you on when you clicked? Team 1 brutal set or team more weekly sets? Now for the strongest argument the one set crowd has. A true failure set recruits the fibers you care about most. That part is real. When you get close to failure, the muscle has to call in the bigger fibers with the best growth potential. But here's the catch. Turning on the big fibers is only one part. You still need enough hard sets across the week. Once those fibers are on, grinding one set down does not magically replace a second or third hard set after some recovery.
You turned them on. Good. You still need enough total hard set exposure across the week for that to matter. This is why one brutal set feels complete when the program isn't. The set feels complete. Your week isn't. So the point still goes to high volume, but now with the nuance that actually helps. Use failure as an amplifier on selected sets. Don't use it as a substitute for more sets. Failure has only a tiny edge overall, and that edge disappears when failure is defined tightly. So yes, failure helps a little. No, it does not rescue low weekly volume. If that cleared up why failure helps, but still doesn't replace enough weekly sets, that's worth a like. And that leads to the round most people get backwards. They hear volume wins, then turn every set into a grinder. That is how both sides lose. Failure has a fatigue cost. If you take every set there, your later sets usually lose reps or load. So the very thing that was supposed to help, more productive weekly volume, gets dragged down by exhaustion. High volume only works well if you do enough hard sets without wrecking the later ones with fatigue. Taking every set to failure burns through energy fast and hurts the later sets you needed. So this round goes to high volume done intelligently. Keep most sets about 0 to 3 reps from failure. Then use true failure on the final set of 1 or 2 exercises in the session. That way you keep the weekly hard set floor without burning too much energy too early. Send this to the friend who thinks one heroic set buys him a whole week of muscle growth. Scorecard time. Efficiency and time, 1 set to failure. Weekly stimulus, high volume. Fiber recruitment in the real world, still high volume. Fatigue management, high volume again. So the score isn't close if the goal is maximum hypertrophy. Here's the regrab though. 1 set to failure is not useless. It works as a minimum dose. In fact, even trained lifters can grow on very low volume when those sets are brutally hard. That is why the method survives. It does work. It just loses the moment your standard becomes what grows most, not what feels hardest fast. And that gives you the final verdict. Multiple set plans produce clearly more growth than single set plans. The single brutal set is not fake work. It just under-delivers for size once weekly volume stays too low. Final point, an overall win goes to high volume for hypertrophy. 1 set to failure is the right pick when time is very tight. It also fits when you are brand new and mainly need a minimum dose, or when you're trying to maintain with low volume. For most people chasing size, it should not be the foundation. If you like training ideas stripped down to what actually grows muscle and what just feels productive, consider subscribing. The practical move is simple. Start by getting each muscle to about 12 hard sets a week. Keep most of those sets 1 to 3 reps short of failure. If progress stalls and recovery is still good, add 2 to 3 weekly sets for that muscle before you add more failure. Level up by adding more productive weekly work first, not more suffering inside one lonely set. So keep the scorecard straight. 1 set to failure wins on efficiency. High volume wins on actual muscle growth. And the rule to remember is your weekly hard set floor. Keep that in place, then let failure sharpen a few sets instead of asking one brutal set to do a whole week's job.